So there's this recent trend on TikTok that I've seen where women are talking about not being able to find a man who's going to give them princess treatment. And of course it begs the question, if you want to be treated like a princess, what does it mean to treat a man like a prince? But y'all ain't ready for that conversation. We're gonna have it anyways though. It's time to talk about it. Guys, before we get into this video, please like and subscribe. I literally dressed as a princess just to talk about this, so y'all know what to do. Now, there once was a time of princes and princesses. You all know that the Snow Whites, Rapunzels, and Belles had their Prince Charming, Flynn Rider, and Beasts. And we all grew up watching these films, everything from Cinderella to Pride and Prejudice, and I'm pretty convinced that we were all daydreaming about one day growing up and finding our Prince Charming. I think some of us even went as far as thinking that we were gonna have our own Mr. Darcy, who would scream that he was bewitched body and soul by us.
I don't understand.
I love you.
But unfortunately, some of the little girls who had those fantasies grew up to be grown women who could no longer find the Prince Charming who was willing to give them that, quote, princess treatment. And now those grown women have TikToks. And I came across a recent TikTok trend where women are talking about exactly that. Let's watch. So this reads how it feels asking a man of this generation for respect, planned dates, princess treatment, and just the bare minimum in general. Now, of course, I have to ask, princess treatment and the bare minimum are really different, so I'm wondering what you're really looking for. But I want to hone in on the princess treatment part of this argument. Now, disclaimer, we all know that there's good men and bad men, there's good women and there's bad women, and there's plenty of blame to throw around when it comes to the modern day dating hellscape that we are all currently living in. But today's focus is talking about the women in particular who want princess treatment. And we'll ask ourselves the question, are you a princess? Now, I think sometimes we can all have this tendency to, when we're dealing with issues in our normal life, sort of cast blame in other directions. It's anything but us, right? And I'm guilty of it. You're probably guilty of it. But a lot of modern women, in my opinion, are particularly guilty of this offense. And I decided to post this TikTok on my socials to ask you guys how you felt about modern women requesting princess treatment from men. And the men had much to say. Let's read some of those comments. Some said, we will be princes when these women start acting like princesses. Another guy said, what kingdom do they represent? The overall message, it seemed, from men was that they would be willing to take on the role of prince if women were willing to act like princesses. And I can see that perspective, right? Especially when it comes to the current climate that we're in right now. Now, I don't want to sound like one of those red pill content creators, but I do have to ask, what are men going to get in return if they start to treat you like a princess? We live in a day and age where women are working and providing for themselves. Many of them don't want to take on the, quote, feminine roles when it comes to relationships and their personal lives. So how is it that you expect a man to take on predominantly masculine roles if you're not willing to accept the feminine ones?
Yes, feminine. She's absolutely right.
I mean, at the end of the day, it is to each their own. Like, you can pick the life that you want for yourself, and I'm sure there are plenty of men who do want to provide for women who are already providing for themselves. I personally work a lot while still having a boyfriend who chooses to take on more masculine roles in our relationship. But again, you must ask yourself, if you want to be treated like a princess, what does it mean to treat a man like a prince? It seems like a lot of women today want to be their own top priority, but when it comes to relationships, they also want to be the top priority of their man. And I'm sure this dynamic might work for at least a little while, but if I were a man in that situation, at some point or another, I'd be asking myself, what am I getting in return here? Like, I know all women in this society just went and collectively watched the Barbie movie, and they're thinking now that they're gonna get some sort of subservient Ken who's just there as an accessory to their own priorities. But I can't imagine that that's going to be the reality for many of us. Because it's not, in fact, what relationships are actually about. In a relationship, at least a healthy one in my opinion. Different people are going to take the priority at different times, and you have to be willing to pick up the slack for the other person, and they have to be willing to do that for you. You can't always be your own top priority and somebody else's top priority. And that's where the whole idea of princess treatment loses me altogether. I think it's unfortunate that we've all been somehow convinced that we're going to find this absolutely perfect Prince Charming who never has any problems and is constantly going to be taking care of us all the time, when we know that's not the reality of being a human being. Now I can already hear the parade of angry feminists screaming, "Men don't deserve that treatment in return." But if that's your mindset, be willing to ask yourself, do you deserve that treatment? We're not just biologically obligated to get treated like princesses by virtue of being born women. I hate to say it, and I hate to sound like this, but you do in fact have to bring something to the table. And that doesn't mean that we're all relegated to like cooking and cleaning and a woman must be in the kitchen making sandwiches. It just means that relationships function when we're both providing something to one another. And if you're a woman who wants princess treatment, you're gonna have to figure out what it is that you're providing to your man in return. And maybe that is taking on the more feminine role, as it's always been known. We are so anti-gender role and anti-masculine and feminine right now that we're not even realizing that these things exist because of our nature. Believe it or not, women do naturally want to rear and caretake and nurture, and men oftentimes naturally want to be dominant, assert themselves. They can be naturally aggressive. These things we should be able to acknowledge. We should also be able to acknowledge how they give way to certain roles and representations in our society. I can promise you that these norms don't exist to oppress you. They are simply part of our nature. And of course, there will be outliers, women who don't want to subscribe themselves to that role or to that life, and that is totally fine. Do what you please. But I can just bet right now and predict right now that the more we go down this path of masculinizing women, the more women are going to find out that they do in fact want princess treatment from men. And that's what makes this so hilarious, to see modern women who refuse to take on feminine roles begging for men to take the masculine ones.
It is really hard to find a man who's willing to play the more traditional masculine role in the relationship.
Which is why the term princess treatment actually becomes so funny. I know I mentioned Snow White at the top of this video. Let's revisit that once more. The original Snow White in 1937 was a true princess. She was feminine and strong. She took on roles of cooking and cleaning, but also just stood really strong in her own right. Now we're morphing the term princess for this new remake that's going to come out, God knows when, and when all these strikes are over. But princess is now a woman who doesn't need a man, a woman who's independent. She saves herself. She doesn't do the cooking and cleaning. In fact, she's as far away from feminine as she possibly can be.
I just mean that it's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White that is
not going to be saved by the prince.
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be, and the leader that her late father told her that she could be if she was fearless, fair, brave, and true.
And if that's what we're doing to cartoon characters that are meant to represent feminine nature, what is it that we're doing to actual modern women in this day and age? And with that being asked, what are we doing to men? We're telling men to just quell these masculine tendencies that they have, feminizing them in large part, while also trying to take on their roles. So now men are either showing up in our society in this overtly feminine way, or they're turning to this sort of toxic, ultra-masculine alpha male nature that really nobody is interested in. So it's a lose-lose situation in both directions. We should simply be asking men to harness their masculine energy and harness it towards productive things, like maybe giving women that princess treatment while women are being princesses, and building healthy, successful relationships that lead to things like kids and nuclear families and an altogether healthier society. But no, we can't do that. We've scorned them. Masculinity is toxic. And now, again, we're all living in a modern dating hellscape.
This is my hell.
This seems to be the prevailing narrative when I hear a lot of modern women talk about men.
I don't hate men. I hate men who reinforce patriarchy, but that's most men.
Need I say more? If I had $1 for every video on the internet I've seen of women talking about how much they hate men, I'd have a lot of dollars. And when men try to fight back and say, hey, it's not all of us, some of us are good, some of us are trying to do the right thing, some of us are trying to build nuclear families, they're turned to and told, hey, but it pretty much is all men. And in fact, you are trying to reinforce the patriarchy. So what do you guys want? I'm really confused. And of course, I can make a whole video about what men are doing wrong in dating, and we can go down that rabbit hole. In fact, I fully intend to. Matter of fact, there's something that we could all be focusing on when it comes to modern dating, and it's looking internally. Oftentimes, we want to turn around and point fingers and say, men are doing this wrong, women are doing this wrong. We did a little bit of that in this video, but we could all be taking the time to look at ourselves. And if we are the type of people who want to find princes or princesses, maybe we should put ourselves in the position of being a person who deserves that sort of treatment, who deserves that kind of life, and building our own healthy, flourishing lifestyles that lead to the attraction of people like that. So if you're a woman who wants a prince and princess treatment, I'm gonna say it. You gotta figure out what you're gonna be giving your prince, how you're going to be treating your prince. It could be personality, it could be cooking and cleaning, it could be that you're girl bossing all the way to the sun and you're gonna bring him money and provide for him. All I'm saying is you gotta get down to the bottom of that before expecting a prince to magically come around and fall into your lap. But those are just my thoughts. Guys, tell me how you feel about this recent trend, what your thoughts are on princess treatment, modern dating, whose fault it is, whatever it is, drop it in the comments down below. As always, I encourage healthy debate, so duke it out, but do so respectfully. And as always, like, subscribe, click the notification bell to be notified every single time I post a video for you guys, which is every single day. And we're now independent on this show. So if you want to support us on Patreon, the link is in the description down below. Totally up to you. No pressure. Either way, I'm going to see you tomorrow.
Yeah, you better. Yeah, you better.